Welcome to Queer Conversation with Dr. Yimin Cheng. As Hollywood rolled out the red carpet and our biggest movie stars came together to celebrate the 94th Academy Awards, researchers from Monash University, Australia have released the findings of extensive research into LGBT inclusion in films and what it means at the box office. Dr. Yimin Cheng leads a team of Monash Business School researchers who analyzed 4,216 contemporary Hollywood films from 2007 and 2014 and found that movies with LGBT inclusive representation significantly outperformed those with no LGBT representation at the box office. In a paper published in the Journal of Business Ethics, the research findings reveal that LGBT-inclusive movies on average gained a staggering 29% more box office revenue than movies with no LGBT content. Welcome, Yimin. We just heard in the intro about the research that you've been leading, and I'm interested to find out a bit more about it. We all know that in the corporate world, in particular, a lot of research has been done in the past about how diversity, helps increase productivity. In the entertainment industry, I believe it's a new approach. Tell me what motivated you to initiate this research.
First of all, thank you very much for having me here, Suki. And as you said, there has been much research about how LGBT inclusion can boost corporate productivity. But we are the first to actually look at it through the entertainment product performance. So we believe this is the first in the world, according to our knowledge. There has been some research on how LGBT community is represented in the movies, but those studies were mainly qualitative studies. So they analyzed the artistic aspect of the movies, but they didn't check the financial performance of movies. So I think our research makes a contribution by showing people actually having LGBT representation in the movie has some implications in the financial performance. So that's the unique contribution of our work. And as to what motivated this research, I mean, I am gay, I'm part of the community. So naturally, this is a topic that interests me. And in addition, over the years, I have observed more and more movies and TV shows, including LGBT characters or plots, and there seems to be a very clear trend. But no one has really studied why. Is that because the movie producers think actually this is going to benefit, they're going to make money because of this addition, or because some other reasons? And you could also think the other way. So many more movies, they could have added LGBT character, but they chose not to. Perhaps they have concerns. So basically, there is this question. So does adding LGBT character help, hurt, or doesn't have any impact on movie's performance? It's a very interesting question, but no one has really done scientific research about it. So then my co-author and I decided to research it ourselves.
How long did the research take?
It was a quite long research project. So this idea came up when I was studying my PhD in Hong Kong. And then I got a chance to visit the Wharton School in University of Pennsylvania in the United States. So I happened to be assigned an office. And there was another visiting scholar from Beijing. He was also visiting at the same time. And we became friends, we started to chat, and we came up with this idea. And then we decided to collect some data to analyze it. But the data collection process was quite challenging because part of the data was from certain websites, so for example, imdb.com and boxmoduleoffice.com. So when we try to scrape the data from the website, the data was not always super clean. So say, for example, sometimes different movies, they share the same name, then we have to identify what is the correct correspondence. So we took quite a long time to clean the data. And also, a few years later, I started to look for a job after graduation from my PhD program. So that put this project on hold also for a while. So it's just recently we picked up, analyzed the data, and read this paper. And fortunately, it got published. So it was a quite long project, but it's a heartwarming one. And we are very pleased to see it published in a very high quality journal, Journal of Business Ethics.
That's amazing. You analyzed over 4,000 movies, is that correct?
So let me explain that a little bit. It's a bit technical. So basically, analyzing, so analysis was done by us, but data collection was rather complex. So we try to streamline it first. So basically, we first developed a software that helps us to automatically scrape the data from imdb.com and the box office module. So we didn't have to manually collect all these data by viewing all the web pages. That saves us quite a lot of time. But as I said, the data was not always perfect. So we did have to manually conduct some manual verification. And part of that was to actually watch the movie trailers and read movie plots. Say, for example, in our study, we basically classified all the movies into 3 categories: movies with no LGBT character at all, movies with LGBT inclusive representation, and movies with LGBT themed representation. Sometimes it's a little bit difficult to tell whether the movie is LGBT inclusive or LGBT themed. So first we use some plot keywords from the imdb.com. So if you go to imdb.com, there is a section, you can see a list of keywords that sort of captures the content of the movie, the plot of the movie. And, let's say if the movie includes party, there may be a keyword of party. If the movie includes LGBT relationship, there may be a keyword of lesbian or gay. So if a movie happens to have this kind of keyword, we automatically classify them as LGBT movie. However, sometimes just using this information is not enough to do a final categorization in terms of whether the movie is LGBT inclusive or LGBT themed. So we end up watching quite a lot of movie trailers and read a lot of movie plots and manually code them. So I remember one day I was working on this project in my office, and my colleague just stopped by to say hi, and he saw that I was, taking a break to watch a movie, but actually I was doing research. So it's a very funny project. So I would say that this is the fun part of the research, and collecting data for research has never been so much fun.
One of the key findings was that movies with LGBTQI themes had a staggering 29% increase on revenue. Can you elaborate on that?
Right. So basically, we found that if we control many other factors that contribute to movies' box office revenue, and we try to partial them out, we still find that movies with LGBT inclusive representations, they enjoy a 29% of increase in terms of box office revenue compared to movies with no LGBT characters or plots at all. And please bear in mind that our funding is aggregated funding. So we are not saying that every single movie that has LGBT inclusive representation will definitely outperform a non-LGBT movie by this much. It is on average, we see this result. And is this result surprising? I would say that when we started this project, we actually didn't have a clue. So we were thinking that maybe LGBT movies will outperform or underperform or perform indifferently from non-LGBT movie. We really didn't have a specific prediction. So whatever we find will be informative. And as a scientist, data speaks to me. And as much as I wish some result to come up, this is a research, this is a funding. But we were very pleased that, actually LGBT inclusive movies, they have outstanding performance. And we think that a 29% increase is a pretty big one. Compared to many other, fundings, 29% is really outstanding. And I think that speaks to the power of LGBT representation. And so I could say that I was little bit surprised, but it's a pleasant surprise.
Me too. I was pleasantly surprised to see this, because this could really affect the way people are choosing their storyline and their plot, and they're not afraid of what would that, how would that affect the box office, and if people were going to tight budget and all of this. So I guess you were motivated based on almost like your gut instinct saying a lot of things, have moved on and changed, and there's such a large representation of LGBT characters now in TV shows and movies. There needs to be some kind of investigation what that means, and you did.
Exactly.
And the outcome is really quite astonishing and actually not surprising.
Right, exactly. I mean, I'm trained as a business researcher, and I often think that if I observe certain market phenomenon, there must be a rationale behind it. If a lot of movies start to adopt LGBT representation, it must because doing this makes sense to them. And one of the possible reasons is that doing this actually benefits the movies in terms of the revenue. And so I sort of have this hint, and I decided to look at it, and the result confirms my intuition. The reception of LGBT movie over the years, I think it speaks a lot about why we observe this finding. So we found that so basically our data covers 8 years from 2007 to 2014, and when we divide the data into two parts, so first 4 years and second 4 years, we actually saw that the reception of the movie and the box office performance for LGBT movie improve over the years. So if we look at the result more in detail, we actually find that in the previous 4 years, LGBT inclusive movie, they perform as well as non-LGBT movie. And LGBT themed movie performed not as well as non-LGBT movie. But in the second 4 years, we found that LGBT inclusive movie performs much better than non-LGBT movie. At the same time, LGBT theme movie perform equally well as non-LGBT movie. So both category improved over the years. And I think this reflects how the attitude and the opinions of the general public evolved over the years. And this is the outcome of a lot of effort from this community and also the ally.
Can you summarize 3 bullet points with your research that are outstanding for you?
So the first finding is that movies with LGBT inclusive representation outperform non-LGBT movies in terms of box office revenue by 29%. And the second finding is that movies with LGBT themed representations perform as well as non-LGBT movies, at least in recent years. And the third finding will be, all LGBT movies, including LGBT inclusive and LGBT themed movies, the reception and market performance keeps improving over the years. So that would be the three major findings from this research.
Talking about the LGBT themed movies like The Kids Are Alright and Carol, in your paper, it does say that they do perform the same than non-LGBT themed movies. Do you think that is because of the caliber of the actors and actresses in those movies, or do you think otherwise?
Right. So that's a very good question. So another important finding from this research is that LGBT themed movie, which are movies that the whole movie is mainly about LGBT, their life, their identity. So we found that this kind of movie, although they do not perform as well as LGBT inclusive movies, but they perform as well as non-LGBT movie, at least in recent years. And I think, so basically we didn't look at the specific artistic element of the movie. So it was not in our model. So our model mainly just categorized the movies based on the degree of LGBT exposure and content in the movie and see whether that predicts the movie outcome. We did try to control quite a lot of things. For example, we try to control whether a movie cast includes some previous Academy Award winners. So you could argue that if the movie happens to have a star, and the star is regarded as having a very good acting skill, it's going to benefit the movie. But we already statistically control for that, so the result could not be attributed to that. We also controlled quite a lot of other things. For example, whether the movie was produced by one of the 6 major studios or otherwise. Because if the movie was produced by major studios, the movie will be more resourceful, and the company will put all the resources to make a better production and also distribute in a better way. So that one was also counted in our model. So again, the result could not be attributed to these things. But one thing that we couldn't include in the model is the specific writing of the plot. I mean, that's a very important part of the movie, right? If a movie has writing very good a script, and then it's going to benefit the movie a lot. So we didn't look at that. Perhaps movies like The Kids Are Alright and Carol, they had really, really good story. It touches many people, and that's why they perform very well. What we can say is that on average, there is this finding. So there's another thing we need to bear in mind, that is when we say LGBT themed movies, they perform equally well as non-LGBT movie, we are looking at the average. So actually, if we look within the LGBT themed movies, movies like Kids Are Alright and Carol are among the best performing ones within this category. There are quite a lot of other LGBT themed movies that you and me perhaps we don't even know because they're not doing very well. That's why we didn't get to see them. And the whole finding is based on the average. Yes, so that's the finding.
Was there a difference on this trend you are describing between transgender, gay, or lesbian movies?
Right. So we did an exploratory study. So this result was not reported in this paper because the paper is quite long already, and for most of the academic journals, they have a page limit. But on the side, we did some analysis, and we found that actually, very interestingly, among the LGBT inclusive movies, lesbian inclusive movies perform even better than gay inclusive movies. So both LGBT inclusive movies perform better than non-LGBT movie, but it seems that movies that includes lesbian character and plots were received even better. And why is that? There has been some research on that. It seems that, at least a few years ago or in the past, people are people probably have a harsher attitude towards gays than lesbians. But in terms of lesbians, people are more tolerant about that. So I think this is a sort of consistent with what was found in the past. Yeah, as I said, both categories outperform non-LGBT movies, so we didn't discuss it in details in this paper. In terms of transgender movies, unfortunately, we didn't have quite a lot of movies in our data. So it's just because there were so few movies that include transgender characters. So we have in total 4,216 movies in our data, and about 300, I think more than 300, 390 or something were LGBT inclusive. About 90 of them were LGBT themed. But transgender movies, probably there were only like 4 or 5, something like that. So from a statistical point of view, even if we run any analysis, the result will not be conclusive. So I think definitely future research can look at these specific categories.
What do you hope to achieve with this now?
So we think that our funding probably would encourage movie producers to include more LGBT representations in their movies. I suspect that a lot of movie producers they want to promote LGBT inclusion, but at the same time they have to be held responsible for their investors, because eventually the movie industry is a business. So our funding basically shows them that adding LGBT representation is a win-win strategy. So on the one hand, you contribute to the inclusion and the visibility of LGBT community, and on the other hand, you also make money from it. And we know that for all business, money talks. So we hope that this would make a difference in this multi-million-dollar industry. So we know that the global movie industry makes about $42 billion a year in 2009. So this is definitely a huge market. So our fundings has both social implication and also economic implication.
Do you think you will revisit this research in a few years to see if the numbers have changed? How does that work?
I'd like to revisit it and have a look of how the result evolves over the years. I'm hopeful that the results will keep improving over the years, because we both know that the public attitude towards LGBT community has changed a lot, and here we are in Australia. I feel in Melbourne, LGBT community is generally very well welcomed, and I hope that we can also extend our research to other countries, other markets, like you suggested earlier, to see how LGBT movie perform in other countries.
And lastly, what are the most popular gay films, and which one were the most popular lesbian films, Yimin?
Right. So it really depends on what do you mean by popularity. So in our data, we could only see the box office revenue. I mean, some people may say that a popular movie is a movie that received a lot of positive review. We didn't check that. But if we only look at the box office revenue, I can give you a few examples. So remember that our data only covers from 2007 to 2014. So many of the outstanding LGBT movies were not included in our data. So in our data, we found that, say, for example, popular lesbian inclusive movies include American Hustle. Some people may be surprised. So why American Hustle is LGBT inclusive movie? So actually, there was a scene where Amy Adams and Jennifer Lawrence, they kissed in the bathroom, and it sort of suggests that they have this kind of chemistry or relationship there. Another lesbian inclusive movie is The Girl with Dragon Tattoo. It also performed very well on the market. And another one is Pitch Perfect. So one of the characters in the choir, Cynthia Rose Adams, so she was open lesbian. So that's another good example. In terms of gay inclusive movies, we all know that Sex and the City, right? So Stanford and Anthony, they're very lovely gay couple. And so that's one of the gay inclusive movie that performed very well. Mamma Mia also performed very well. So at the end of the movie, Harry Bright, played by Colin Firth, revealed that he is actually gay. And another good gay inclusive movie is Valentine's Day. So a lot of people will see Valentine's Day 2010 as a popcorn movie. But actually, it's quite a good example of LGBT inclusive movie. Why? Because the movie features many relationships, many couples, and one of them is gay, played by Bradley Cooper and I think it's Eric Dane. So they are a gay couple, and their story is as important as the stories of other couples in the movie. Yet they are just one of them, one of the many. So that's a very good example of LGBT inclusive representation. That one also performed very well. In terms of themed movies, so popular lesbian themed movies would include The Kids Are Alright, Blue is the Warmest Color, and also Albert Nobbs. So this, many people don't know this movie, but it's about there was this woman who wants to be a butler, but back in that time, the role of butler can only be taken by men. So she basically changed her appearance and worked as a butler for many years. And eventually she also came out and she had a partner. So it was considered as a lesbian themed movie. And gay themed movies, there are so many. And the popular ones include, say, for example, A Single Man by Tom Ford, and Love is Strange. So this is a movie about an old gay couple. They went through, separation and the other experience they went through during the separation. And something like I Love You, Philip Morris. So that was a comedy by Jim Carrey. Jim Carrey and Ian McKellen. And so they played a gay couple in the movie. So Jim Carrey was this person who was, I forgot whether he was a banker or working in finance. So he made a lot of money, but in an illegal way. So he ended up in the jail. But in the jail, he met another prisoner, and they developed love to each other. And when Jim was released, he wanted to get his partner out. And so that was a romance comedy.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
Yimin, thank you so much for your time today. That was really interesting to listen to you and to the background of the research, and especially the amazing findings. I am looking forward to see the landscape change even more over the next few years. enjoy queer conversation, make sure to check out our website lotl.com, where you will find more content on LGBTQI+ topics, and don't forget to follow us on social media. My name is Silke Bader, and thank you for your company.